During the colonial era of the 1700s, the early immigrants to Hopewell area were mostly Dutch, followed by the English. When Scotch and Irish immigrants arrived in the 1800s, much of the desirable land had been spoken for, and some ended up in the Sourland Mountains just outside of Hopewell. This area was more isolated, rocky, and difficult to farm. During this period, small crossroads villages grew up to service the many small farms scattered throughout the area. Although the distances to villages like Hopewell were small by today's standards, the trips were arduous with horse-drawn wagons and very rudimentary one-lane roads that became impassable during the spring thaw. Rileyville, 3 miles outside of Hopewell, was one of those villages and was named after Patrick Riley. He arrived as a child from Ireland with his father and mother, Philip and Bridget, in 1824. We don't know how or why they made their way to Hopewell, but by 1850, when Patrick was 34, the census lists his property value as $2,000. We know Patrick had a general store, apple orchards, and an Applejack distillery. The village eventually included a one-room school, the Tidd School, named after another prominent local resident who founded it. It also had a small church, the Mountain Christian Church, built in 1934. A blacksmith, general store, and post office took care of most needs, complemented by occasional trips into town. These small farms were very labor-intensive, with labor coming mostly from family members, and property was usually passed along those same lines. When he died in 1869, Patrick's property was valued at $23,000, approximately $500,000 in today's dollars. It appears that his brother James took over the farm. James died in 1889 when son Isaac, my great-grandfather, was 27 years old. He must have inherited or taken over the farm from his father. Isaac married Jenny Stout, and they raised 6 children, including my grandmother Lillian. Lillian was studious and as a young lady commuted to downtown Trenton to the Trenton Normal School for teachers. That required a 3-mile walk to Hopewell and a 1-hour trolley ride to Trenton and a return at night. After graduation, she started teaching at Wurtsville School, a few miles down the road from her home. We think that is where she met George McCandless, who lived on the McCandless farm near the school. They eventually married and had 2 sons, Tom, my father, and Harry. They married 2 Hallfish sisters, Marion and Margaret, bringing 2 families deeply a part of Hopewell life together.
Yeah, so there's an old, looks like an old grinding, like a sharpener or something. Not good to see it up in there.
Oh, yeah.
But I told the boys, we've taken about as much out of the top as I'm comfortable with because I don't want them to get hurt with a collapse.
Yeah.
These 2 rooms down here were stuck. Oh my goodness. Almost to the ceiling in here.
Wow.
Years and years.
So you're doing quite a job.
Well, a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
You know, we put a new roof on that house.
So you haven't seen where the distillery was yet?
No!
So where is it from?
What is the foundation talking about?
I think I'm pretty sure it was back this way, if I recall.
Well, I know it's on the road, and that great big boulder
Yeah, back, okay.
here. It's been a long time since I was back there.
Yeah, we're trying to pull out anything that looks like it's, might be kind of fun to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of
Air power
What a
drill
job.
or electric? Or
Man, they didn't
didn't have
electric,
electricity?
that's for
What
sure.
would they have had back then?
Whatever
Not a hand
whatever
drill.
a horse or a couple of men could do, that's all.
They had a steam sawmill up here somewhere. Have you read that Sourland mountain book?
Now this, at one time, would have been a working farm because of the barn, right? You would think.
Yeah, well, they had the orchard and the apple and the distillery. It mentions that in the book, in fact.
He'd be very pleased.
Specifically this property?
Yeah.
Really? Back here, you could see like wagon, you see two ruts. And that, we encountered that maybe 200 feet off from here, going back that way.
Yeah.
There's like I'll call it a trail or an old, whatever. I don't know whether it was from, farm, tractors or whatever going through there.
We like to think it was.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But so I just
That
figured
is so
that
neat
there was
that
a
you
point
bought
in
this
time.
place and you appreciate history.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. I love the ceiling. Wow.
Dress like what for life. Yeah, this is.
But see, this is more beautiful, the floor.
Look at how wide the planks are.
Yes.
It's a beautiful floor.
Yes.
And that's the entrance for the tenant to go upstairs. At one time, this wall wasn't here, and this wall obviously was not here.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is where the fireplace was.
Oh, yeah.
And there was two bookcases here. And then
That's
I guess that was
fantastic.
addition back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Based on the newspaper ad for an auction after Isaac died of a stroke at age 64 in 1926, he had diversified his operation and had 120 acres, 60 of which was used for cultivation of various crops, and the rest was used for timber and grazing. And although cars were popular, it appears that the Rileys were still using actual horsepower. In the sale, there was a horse listed, as well as a wagon, a carriage, and a sleigh. Isaac had quite an operation, but the Riley story on Sourland Mountain ended here. Many of the small crossroads communities faded away with the arrival of the railroads, better roads, and faster transport, which brought goods from far and wide, making it difficult for the small farmers to compete. After selling off the property, Jenny moved to Hopewell to live with her daughter Lillian and her husband George on Prospect Street. Our ancestors toiled endless hours to clear and tame the rugged Sourlands, eking out modest livings, building communities, and providing for their families. While the relentless tide of progress has swept away most of those communities and farms, nature has prevailed and much of the area has returned to its wild state. Now there are preservationists dedicated to protecting the area and creating trails and preserves for all of us to explore and enjoy.